Hello, and welcome to Revenge by Larry. Please watch this story all the way through, subscribe for future videos, and let me know your opinion below. Dad set his fork down like he was giving me a favor, not a blow to the ribs, and said, "We gave your wedding fund to your brother. He deserves a royal wedding." I stared at the roast, like it might tell me how a promise turns into a handout for someone else. My name's Colin. I'm 28. I live just outside of Pittsburgh. Across the table, my fiancée Tessa squeezed my knee under the table. Not hard. Just enough to say she was still here. Still calm. For now. Before we start, share in the comments how's your day going and where are you joining from? And let's continue. Mom nodded like she was agreeing with a weather report. Dylan, my younger brother by 2 years, grinned into his phone like it was just another Tuesday. I kept my voice flat. "The fund you promised when I was a senior? Equal for both of us?" Dad reached for the potatoes like I'd asked him to pass the salt. "You've always been fine, son." "You don't need help," he added. "Your brother's planning something special, big, family level." I glanced at Tessa. Her jaw didn't move, but her body shifted just slightly like someone bracing for a car that's already skidding. She was holding it together better than I was. I didn't throw anything. Didn't raise my voice. "How much are we talking about?" Mom said, "Most of it," like she was giving me a weather update. "It's already locked in deposits. Venue in Aruba." Dylan perked up like this was his cue. 240 guests, 12-piece band, destination welcome dinner, the works. He said it like he'd invented weddings and was blessing us with the blueprint. "Got it," I said. "So, what happened to the promise?" Dad chuckled. "Because you don't need it." Tessa cleared her throat. Her tone was calm, but her grip on my knee stayed tight. "Was the money ever in Colin's name?" "No," Mom said without flinching. "It's family savings." Family. That word had a strange way of shifting meaning when Dylan needed something. I swallowed hard. "Okay." Nothing about it was okay. Tessa didn't flinch. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and slid it under the table. Her thumb hovered for a second before she looked at me. "Colin," she said, quiet but firm, "are you sure you want me to stay quiet?" I stared at my parents, at the smug tilt of Dylan's head, and realized this was it. This was the moment everything turned. I looked back at Tessa. "No," I said. "Let's do this." I didn't answer Tessa right away at that table. I couldn't. I was too busy watching my brother lean back like the world had done exactly what it was supposed to do for him again. And maybe it had. That's how it always was growing up. We lived in a one-story brick ranch just outside Erie. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Everything bent around Dylan. Mom called him spirited. Dad said he had that spark. I was steady. That meant I didn't crash the car or cut class. By 8th grade, steady turned into background noise. Mom said Dylan needed extra attention. He got new shoes when he lost the old ones. I got the silent treatment when I tore mine mowing lawns for gas money. Dad acted like Dylan's moods were signs of genius. Mine were ignored unless they were inconvenient. When I was 16, I bought a busted-up Saturn for $1,200. Paid for it myself stocking produce at the grocery store after school. Dylan turned 18 and got a used Jeep with a red bow. That's just how it went. I filled out my FAFSA on the library computer because hours kept freezing. No one asked how it turned out. No one even noticed I'd done it. When Dylan applied to community college, they threw a backyard barbecue with ribs and balloons. Mom made a big banner. It got easier not to ask. Whenever I did, Mom let out this long, tired sigh, like I'd ruined the vibe. Dad would say I was making drama and ask if I wanted to ruin dinner. So I stopped. I leaned into what I could control. I liked systems, schedules, moving pieces that made sense, That's how I ended up in logistics, operations coordinator at a medical supply distributor. I keep track of things. I fix problems. I make sure stuff shows up when it's supposed to. No one ever asked what I did unless it came up by accident. If the house was quiet and the bills were paid, they called that a win. Being the background kid taught me how to handle my own problems. It also taught me how easy it was to get ignored when you never made noise. Dylan tried stuff, quit stuff, took up bartending, then quit again. He was finding himself. When I picked up double shifts, Dad said I was doing the right thing, then changed the subject. I remember the first time I saw the envelope, weddings future. I was a senior. Dad said, "Same for both." Mom smiled. That was the deal. People think being the fine one is a compliment. It's not. It's just code for you'll survive without us. And if you do it long enough, they start to believe you don't need anything at all. I told myself it didn't bother me. I bought into that lie hard. Right up until they handed my half to Dylan like it was a drink refill. I should have known. The promises were only real for the one who kept the house loud. I should have known how things worked by then, but I didn't. Not really. Not outside of family. Tessa showed me a whole different rhythm. We met at a small business workshop 4 years ago at the community center. I'd signed up to learn how to track budgeting better for my department. She sat 2 seats down in plain sneakers, no jewelry, notebook open, already flipping pages when the rest of us were still figuring out the handout. She laughed when the instructor made a joke about the coffee tasting like mop water. I laughed too. It wasn't that funny, but her laugh made it sound like it was. We ended up walking to the lot at the same time. She asked what I did, and I said, "Logistics, medical supplies." She nodded and said she was in food manufacturing, like that was all there was to say about it. 2 nights later, we got tacos. I noticed she tipped 20% without thinking. She didn't check her phone once. I liked how she asked about people, my coworkers, my boss, my sister I barely talked to, before she asked anything about what I earned or drove. For 6 months, nothing was dramatic, no fireworks, just walks through the park after dark, frozen pizza nights, bad Netflix movies, and pasta sauces that burned to the pan because we were talking too much to stir. She drove an old Subaru that smelled like spilled coffee and dog hair. Same jacket most nights. Same reusable grocery bags in the back seat. I remember thinking, finally, someone who doesn't have something to prove. I didn't know her last name until month 3. She just said Flynn one day when we were talking about emails. It didn't mean anything to me. I didn't Google it. Didn't feel like I needed to. What hooked me was how she listened. Not with tips or advice or filler noise, just actual silence while I talked like I wasn't interrupting her day by existing. I told her about Dylan in pieces, how things used to be at home. She didn't go full therapist or try to fix it. One night she asked, "Does he take your oxygen?" I said, "He takes the table." She got it. She met my parents about a year in. Mom liked her hair and said so twice. Dad liked that she laughed at his same old stories. Dylan barely acknowledged her. He said hi, and that was it. I figured that was fine. Quiet worked for us. We didn't need to be seen by everybody else to know what we had. What I didn't know yet was how deep her calm ran. And she didn't know yet how deep I'd buried my habit of never asking for anything. I was at Tessa's apartment on a Saturday helping her sort lease papers and old folders because the landlord wanted copies of everything again. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, stacks spread out between us. When I lifted one folder, a glossy magazine slid out and landed face up by my knee. Her face stared back at me. Smaller photo in the corner. Clean background. Confident but quiet smile. The headline read, "The quiet founder behind the snack aisle shakeup." I froze. Not in a dramatic way. More like my body hit pause before my brain caught up. I picked it up and flipped pages. The article laid it out clean. Tessa Flynn started a baked protein snack company in college. She bootstrapped it, built distribution, sold a majority stake to a national brand 2 years before we met. They didn't print exact numbers, but they didn't have to. The language did enough work. Strategic exit, industry impact, sustained growth, the kind of success you don't bring up at cookouts unless you want things to get weird. I looked up. Tessa watched me, calm, legs crossed, hands resting on her knees. She didn't rush me, didn't grab the magazine. She let me finish. "I didn't tell you," she said, steady, "because I wanted to be a person first." I nodded, still holding the magazine. "I liked you before I ever saw this." "I know," she said. Then she asked, "Does anything feel different now?" I shook my head. "Not about us." That part was true. What I didn't say was how something inside me loosened. My shoulders dropped without asking permission. I'd never been next to someone who didn't need me to shrink so they could take up space. We didn't change anything after that. Same Subaru, same takeout spots, same arguments about whose turn it was to do dishes. Her money never came up. Her steadiness did. Last spring, I asked her to marry me in our living room, kneeling on one knee in front of a half-finished bookshelf we'd been fighting with for weeks. She laughed, said yes, and kissed me with sawdust still stuck in my hair. We planned small, on purpose. A ceremony by a lake in the Finger Lakes. About 42 people, close friends, her parents, maybe mine if they acted right. The old wedding fund crossed my mind. I didn't count on it. It felt more like a test than a resource. Tessa said, "We'll do this how we want. If they help, fine. If they don't, also fine." I nodded and believed her. I still thought basic fairness was on the menu, and I kept stacking papers until the pile was neat again. I was still stacking papers when Dylan got engaged. It was May. By June, he talked about a resort in Aruba, like he'd invented beaches and bottled the sun. He sent a group text with a link to a 12-page PDF, mood boards, fire dancers, statement florals, signature cocktail activations with names I couldn't pronounce. It read less like a wedding and more like a product launch. Mom replied with a string of hearts and said it was beautiful. Dad wrote, "This is what a family celebration looks like." I didn't answer. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. I did the math quietly. Flights for 2. Rooms for 4 nights. Days off work I'd have to beg for. Tessa leaned over, read the highlights, and shrugged. "We can afford it, that isn't the issue." She wasn't wrong, which somehow made it worse. At a cookout a few weeks later, Dylan slapped my back hard enough to spill my drink. He grinned and said, "Don't skimp on my gift, big bro. You know how it is." I told him I didn't know how it was. He laughed and wandered off. Dad kept bragging about supporting Dylan's vision. Mom called it memorable every chance she got. I noticed how carefully they avoided the word promise, like it might shatter if said out loud. I asked Dad about it once, just me and him on the porch, the smell of lighter fluid still in the air. I asked if the wedding fund was still a thing for me. He didn't hesitate. "You're solid, Colin. You've got this." That was the answer. No wasn't said, but it didn't need to be. I felt the ground tilt a little, like when a ladder shifts and you pretend you're fine. Tessa didn't yell or push. She said, "If they break it, we set boundaries." She said it like she was adding milk to a grocery list. I said, "It's still my family." She nodded. Both can be true. I hated that she was right. I hated that being right didn't make anything lighter. We kept planning our small day with our small circle. Lake, simple vows. Food people would actually eat. I kept hoping my parents wouldn't make me choose between my spine and their table. I kept showing up. I kept quiet. I kept believing they might surprise me. Then Sunday dinner came, and I parked the car, shut the door, and walked up to the house anyway. Back at that table, with my dad still chewing like nothing had cracked open, Tessa looked at me and asked again, calm as ever, "Are you sure you want me to stay quiet?" I didn't blink. No. She stood up like she had all the time in the world. No drama, no stomp, just calm purpose. She pulled up a document on her phone, then turned it toward my parents. "My name is Tessa Flynn," she said. "I founded North Shore Bakes. We sold majority ownership to Grant Home Foods 6 years ago. This article covers it." Mom's smile disappeared like it had been wiped off with a cloth. Dad's eyes darted to the headline, then back to his plate. Dylan leaned forward like he was checking the damage, then leaned back fast like the fire might jump. Tessa's voice never wavered. "Colin and I were paying for our wedding. We invited you to be part of it, not to test your character. But here we are." She set her phone face down in the middle of the table, right next to the gravy boat. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "You will return every dollar you promised Colin. I don't care if it's in deposits. I don't care if you already spent it. You'll figure it out." Dad started to talk. "You can't talk to us like—" Tessa didn't raise her voice. "I can, because you broke your word and stole from your son. That's not a misunderstanding. That's theft." Dylan finally spoke. "I didn't know it was your fund, man." Mom jumped in right after. "It's family savings. We didn't label it one way or another." Tessa looked directly at her. "Then why was it introduced to him as equal for both kids?" No one answered. I didn't stand. I didn't need to. I kept my hands on my lap and looked straight at my dad. Tessa laid it out. "You have 21 days. On day 22, a lawyer sends letters. On day 30, those letters go public. There won't be a conversation after that." Dad muttered something under his breath about blackmail. Tessa corrected him. "No, it's accountability." I looked at my mom, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Dylan, who was already back to checking his phone like the pressure couldn't touch him. I finally spoke. "I'm not asking for a fight. I'm asking you to stop treating me like the furniture in your house." Tessa picked up her bag and looped it over her shoulder. "We're leaving now. You'll wire the money to Colin. No wedding talk until then." She walked to the door. I followed without a word, and when it closed behind us, the silence felt like power. The group text lit up that same night before we even made it home. Mom sent 5 long messages, paragraphs about how things had escalated and felt ungrateful. Dad sent one line, "Call me." Dylan naturally dropped a thumbs-up emoji and followed it with, "Bro, we good?" I didn't respond. Not to any of it. Tessa sat beside me on the couch and quietly drafted the lawyer letter anyway. She didn't say much while she worked, just saved the file to a folder on her desktop and said, "Hope we don't need it." But it was there, loaded, ready. 2 days in, Mom called Tessa directly to clear the air. Tessa let her talk for maybe 30 seconds before cutting in, "Call Colin." Then she hung up. Mom didn't call me. Day 7, Dad called again. This time he opened with, "Let's just meet in the middle. I can send half." I didn't yell. I said, "You promised equally." His voice tightened. "You're fine, as always." I said, "It isn't about the money." Then I ended the call. Day 13, Dylan posted a video of the resort venue. Fire pits, tiki torches, drone footage over palm trees. The comments were full of hearts and "this is goals" and "so magical." I scrolled for maybe 10 seconds, then put on my running shoes and ran until my legs shook. Day 16, Mom texted, "Can we heal before the holidays?" I replied, "We can heal after the wire hits." She didn't respond. Day 19, it landed. No subject line, no note. just numbers in my account with the exact total Dad once promised. Nothing more, nothing less. Clean, silent. I found out later he pulled a small home equity line to make it happen. Kendra's parents stepped in to cover the deposits in Aruba. The wedding date stayed the same. I stared at the transfer and waited for something. Anger, joy, regret. But none of it showed up. Just relief, like air sealing a tire that had been leaking for years. I set a boundary, put the family group chat on mute. No Sunday dinners, no swing by for coffee, nothing for now. I texted Dad one sentence. "You kept your word late. We'll keep our distance for now." He wrote back, "Don't punish us for one decision." I read it, locked my phone, and turned it face down. Dylan didn't call. He sent a meme about bridezillas, like this was all some punchline. Tessa hugged me from behind while I stood at the sink. "Now we do our day on our terms," she said. I turned, kissed her forehead, and said, "Yeah." And this time I meant it. 7 months later, we got married at a small lodge above Keuka Lake. The water was clear, the air had that clean bite to it, and the trees were just starting to drop yellow leaves. Nothing flashy, no themes, no fire dancers, just space to breathe. We had 42 people. Her parents came early to help set up. My 2 closest friends from high school showed up with rolled-up sleeves and didn't need to be asked twice. They were the kind of people who never needed a big story to know something mattered. We wrote our own vows. No microphone, no rehearsed speeches. I promised to stay present even when it's easier to shut down. She promised I'd never have to fight to be seen in my own home. During the photos, I stepped off to the side for a minute and heard loons calling across the lake. I realized I wasn't bracing for a comment. No sideways remarks, no tension under the skin, just stillness. At dinner, Tessa's dad raised his glass and toasted to quiet work and loud love. I don't know why, but that line caught in my throat harder than anything else that day. I didn't invite my parents. I didn't leave the door cracked or the seat open just in case. I made a choice, and I stood in it. There wasn't an ounce of me wondering if they were hurt by that. I was done folding myself in half for people who only showed up when it made them feel generous. We danced to a song we'd stumbled across on a bad streaming playlist one night, one that didn't matter to anyone else, but meant something to us. Tessa's eyes never left mine. Not once. After the cake, while people were still lingering near the fire pit, I pulled out my phone, opened my bank app, and moved every last cent from the wedding fund wire into a foundation that supports community college students and trade apprenticeships. All of it. Gone from me. Headed somewhere it might actually do some good. The receipt hit my inbox a minute later. I sat down on a rock wall and breathed out slow. It felt like sealing off a leak, like proof that I wasn't for sale. One of my buddies clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "That's a move, man." I told him, "It's not revenge." He shrugged. "Feels like justice." Tessa kissed my cheek. Now there are going to be a few more kids who don't have to do it alone. That night we went to bed early. No spotlight, no show, just us, tired in the best kind of way. Dylan's Aruba wedding went down last month. I wasn't looking for it, but a cousin posted an album on Facebook. 10-foot sparklers shooting up into the night sky, a champagne wall with gold-stemmed flutes, matching sunglasses with bride tribe and groom squad printed across the lenses. The pictures looked like a magazine spread. Perfect lighting, perfect smiles. But word traveled fast. Turns out the best man toasted with a half-baked roast about Kendra's dad being cheap. The room went dead quiet. Someone cried. I didn't ask who. Dylan posted a video of his entrance, walking through flame columns like he was headlining a concert. The comments said iconic and movie star energy. Funny how the clip with the speech never made it to his page. 2 nights later, my phone rang at 11:30. Dylan. I let it buzz out. A minute later, he texted, "They're saying you threatened Mom and Dad." I stared at the screen for a second before replying. I asked for what was promised and stopped arguing. He didn't respond right away. An hour later, another ping. "Kendra's upset. This is bad timing." I didn't type what I wanted to, that my timing had never once mattered in that house, that I'd been expected to shut up and smile through every bad moment so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. Instead, I put my phone down and started doing the dishes. A couple days later, Mom sent me a photo of Dylan and Kendra's first dance. The caption just said, "Isn't this sweet?" I didn't answer. She didn't follow up. Dad tried a different route. "Let's start fresh before Thanksgiving." "Late November's a good time," I replied. "After accountability comes consistency. We can revisit next year." He didn't like that answer either. One of their old friends texted me, probably after hearing whispers at church or some cookout. "Heard you gave the wedding fund away. Why?" I replied, "Because it wasn't mine to keep." And that was the end of that. I don't know if they expected me to crash the party or mail some fancy gift that would wipe the slate clean. But I didn't do either. I wasn't going to play a part in their polished rewrite of how things went. I wasn't cruel. I was quiet. Sometimes that lands harder. That night, Tessa and I grilled burgers on our little deck. She cracked open a beer, and we watched the game in hoodies, side by side, without saying much. And the silence we had, that was the kind you keep on purpose. We closed on a small house in October. Nothing fancy, but it had what we wanted. One-car garage, a big old maple in the backyard that dropped leaves like confetti, and a kitchen just wide enough for people to stand around and laugh without bumping elbows. First week in, I put up shelves in the laundry room, measured twice, took my time. No need to rush when the space is finally yours. Tessa painted the spare room a soft yellow she swore looked like morning. I didn't see it at first. Now I do. We don't keep score. She handles the garden because I'll forget to water even a cactus. I do the grocery runs because I actually like finding deals that don't involve off-brand misery. It's not about splitting things down the middle. It's about giving what you've got and not keeping a receipt. When bills come, we pay them. No drama. When the neighbor's snowblower jammed after the first storm, I didn't wait to be asked. I grabbed my shovel and went over. Helping didn't feel like some big gesture. It just felt like being a grown man with a working back and a decent pair of boots. Sometimes I still think about being the fine one. How useful that was. How easy I made it for them to overlook me. If I could talk to the kid I was, I'd tell him to stop being so proud of needing nothing. I'd tell him to ask for the chair he needed at the table and not apologize for it. And if someday I have a son who looks past me the way I used to look past myself just to keep the peace, I'll stop him. I'll say, "You don't have to disappear to be loved here." The receipt from that donation sits in a drawer. Not to wave around, not for proof, just to remind myself that I had a choice when it counted, and I made it. No one took it from me. I gave it away the way I wanted to. People sometimes ask if I miss my parents. I tell them the truth. I miss the version I thought I had. The one that lived in my head, not the one that sat at the table smiling while they cut me out. I don't miss the weight of that version. That's something different. Last week, Dylan sent a photo of a new watch he bought. I sent a thumbs up. No sarcasm, no lecture. I'm not the referee of his life. Sometimes Tessa catches me staring out the window and says, "Where'd you go?" I say, "Just checking the windows," which is really my way of saying, making sure the walls are still ours. If you've ever been the background kid, the steady son, the one everyone counts on but never really sees, listen close. You get to ask for fair. You get to draw the line and mean it. Loud ones burn fast. Quiet ones build slow. But when the shaking starts, guess who's still standing? Before you head out, Where's your line with family and fairness? If you have hype, tap it to boost this. Please subscribe and like. One click helps. Drop a comment, good story, or your take.